Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Perez-Carreno, and welcome to an episode of the Web Talk Show. Today, we're going to be talking about running n8n agents without having to use tokens. That's going to be a fun subject of conversation. I'm going to show you how you can use an AI agent inside n8n as a node, but it will not be using pay-per-use tokens. It will actually be using your regular subscription to something like Claude. We're going to use Claude in this exercise, but you could also do it with Codex or Gemini or any other tool that has a CLI. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Might be a little technical, but not too much. I'll do a write-up where I explain exactly how to do this. I heard the original concept from Network Chuck. Thanks, Network Chuck. That was a great idea. I expanded a little bit upon it and added my flavor. So we're going to talk about what we can do. And I'm going to show you on the screen how to set it up. And if you're interested in actually building it yourself, just playing around with it, just send me a message on the comments or on Instagram. You can find me, Perez-Carreno, on Instagram, X, etc. Wherever you can find me, send me a DM and I'll send you the JSON for the n8n thing so you can play around with it yourself. This is going to be cool. It's something that I think most people don't know that's possible. And once you get it running, it's not too complicated, but it is amazing. So let's share the screen here. What we're going to do is go to this scene here, and you should be able to see me as well as the screen. So what you're looking at now is something very interesting. I'm sorry if you're in mobile. In mobile, I don't have control over which part of the screen exactly you're looking at, but I might just scroll over a little bit if necessary. But ideally, you're looking at desktop because we're looking at this big interface. So let's go into what's going on here. The example that I'm showing today has nothing to do with the actual agent use. It's more of a real world example so you can see it running in action. But I'm going to explain all these little steps and what they mean. It's a lot of fun. Really, the only thing that you need is this node here that says Claude Code New Session. And that's either that one or the Claude Code existing session. That's all you need. And I'll explain what each of these means and why it's so important. So let's start off with how you typically use agents in n8n. Typically, let's say you were building a chatbot. In this case, this is Telegram. Maybe I'm building a chatbot and I want to be able to interact with it. Well, what I would do is I would go in and I would create a new node, and it would be an AI node, and I would do like an AI agent. Now, this is nice. When you have this, you can then choose a model like Anthropic or ChatGPT or whatever you want, right? So basically you have this agent, you have a model, and you have to add memory if you wanted to keep track of your conversation. Here you can do even simple memory or connect it to a database, and that's it. If you connect the chat node here, or if you connect a Telegram trigger or a WhatsApp trigger or whatever you want over here, and then out the other way, you can reply, and you'll get the messages. It works. It's great. There's a ton of tutorials out there. You can find them. Don't worry about it. Now, the problem with this is you have to connect this to your Anthropic account, and it's not going to connect to your subscription. So I know many of you have subscriptions to OpenAI Plus, Pro, whatever. And if you're already paying for that, you're like, why can't I just use that? I use that on my browser, on my phone. I want to use it in n8n. I don't want to have to pay per million tokens or whatever amount that is. Also with Anthropic, maybe you're using Claude, maybe you have your max plan or your pro plan, whatever the plans are called. Again, you're already paying $100 for it or $200 for it. Why do you want to be also paying for tokens? That's my question, and a question we've had a lot. Well, this absolutely solves that issue. Instead of using the AI agent step, what we do, get rid of this, is we host, this is so funny, we host Claude Code, which is the CLI version or the command line version of Claude, in a server. Could be in a server anywhere. You could be a local server. I have a local server here. You could put it in a VPS on hosting or whatever, and you just SSH into it. This is a networking term. You basically connect to the server securely, and then you can run Claude commands. And that's one of the beauty of one of the wonders of n8n, that you can do anything. You literally have an SSH node that you can use to send commands into a server. So let me show you what this looks like. If you have a terminal, so this is a terminal. So in this particular scenario, what we're looking at here is me logged in into that remote server, right? So if I do host name, it'll tell me the host name. It's that server. It's not my computer. It's a server somewhere, right? In this case, some hidden closet, right? So the server is there. Now, if I was in that server, I could run Claude and it would open Claude, right? So here it is. Yes, I trust this folder and I'm here in Claude and it tells me where I am, etc. If you ever use Claude Code, you know how powerful it is. And if you haven't, Claude Code is amazing. Yeah, all the tools are great, but Claude Code is really nice compared to regular Claude or Claude Desktop because you can write to the file system, which means you can say things like create a new file called, I don't know, chocolate.md and write a poem about chocolate. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so I am telling Claude Opus 4.5 here to do that. And since it has access, or should have access, to the file system, it wrote here, that's the chocolate, dark and rich, velvet dream, melting slow, and whatever. So I do want to write this file. Yes. So what it did, or it's doing, is writing to that file. Done. I've created the file. So I'm going to exit Claude Code, and I'm going to ls, and I see that in this directory, now I have this file, right? It's there outside Claude, just in the server. Okay. Now, for anyone who knows servers, networking, this is no real news. This is just how Claude Code runs in a computer, any computer in this case. This is just a server. So what I'm trying to tell you is you can host a server anywhere you want, like a $5 a month server, okay? It could just live there. And as long as it has Linux, you can go to the Claude website or Gemini or whatever tool you're using and find the CLI version and install it. And the command is very simple. So if we actually go to, let's say, let me grab it over here. We could probably do Claude Code, and we go to the website. The way to install it is very easy. I just go here, and there it is. Get started. You literally just do curl with this, and it'll install it. You follow the instructions, and it will ask you to connect to your account. So it's very straightforward. Just do it once, and once you have that, then you can actually just go in and connect to it. Okay, so once you have that, let me remove the terminal from here. Once you're sure that you have Claude Code or Gemini, again, because Gemini I think has a free tier, you don't have to have the Pro Max or the whatever plan. You go into that terminal, you install it, you're good. Now, next step. Now this is where we use n8n. You go to n8n and you're gonna create a new credential. I'm not gonna open mine here just because I don't want to, but here you see where it says credential to connect to, and I have here Tuna Scale n8n SSH because I created a credential for Tuna Scale for SSH, and it's not anything out of this world. It's literally just, let me show you what it looks like. I'm just gonna change some things here for privacy purposes, I guess, and let's go over here again. So this is what it looks like. You basically have an SSH credential, which has a host, could be an IP address. I made this one up. You can have a port, which is the SSH port typically, a username, and a password. So you save it. It'll test the connection. It'll basically connect to that SSH server or that server via SSH. Once it does that, then if it's green, you're golden. And what that means is that now you can use the SSH node. So the SSH node can do whatever you want. So I could have the SSH, let me just copy here just to show you. If I have this and I open it and I just remove everything and I just say hostname, I just do execute step. Well, I can't because Telegram is on. Let me just pin something there. Let's pin an execution. Ignore what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. There we go. Okay, so here it is, standard out epsilon. Or if I do something like ls, okay, what's it gonna do? In this case, it's telling me where. It's just the whole path, but that's not really important. Okay, so this also means I can run Claude like I just did in the terminal, right? So what this means in reality is that now you can, by having this little SSH node, do anything you want on that server. In this case, run Claude. Now, caveat here, just I want to mention for everyone's safety, if you're not well versed with computer systems, don't do this on your local computer. Ideally, you'll want to have a VPS or a virtual machine or something where this is just a Docker container or something that's just isolated, doesn't have access to anything of your regular files. It's just a thing that you have for this, okay? I've said that. Now, let's say you have a server, you connect to it via SSH, all right? That's cool. You're able to do that. Now that you did that, you can now talk to it. Here, I can call Claude commands or Claude Code commands. Now, what is all the rest of this mess? Well, this is where it gets a lot of fun. If you send a command like this one, Claude, ignore the dangerously skip permissions. Let me actually show you just a basic example, just so people are not extremely confused of what we're doing here. I am just going to do -p, which means it's not going to be, there it is, and I'm going to say, what color is the sky, right? So if I do that, what it's going to do, it's going to enable Claude Code in non-interactive mode. So it's just basically going to return the result. And there it is. The sky appears blue during the day due to blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's Claude Opus 4.5 running in that server that I was talking about, bringing the information back and throwing it in here in n8n, right? Now, the problem is when I do this, it's just going to be a single request. There's no session, there's no memory. We had said before when I was starting the conversation that if I were using an AI agent, I would have a memory node here. And that memory node would allow me to keep track of the conversation for a little bit or for a lot or whatever until the server restarts, or maybe I would store it in a database. So how can you overcome that with this? Well, there are many ways. Claude Code has sessions, and you can resume sessions, which is the fun part. So if you look at the documentation, you'll see that they have, if I go over here and I look for sessions, I can go to, well, you can name your sessions, of course, but start your first session. You can switch sessions, etc. You can rename sessions, but this is the important part. You could do resume sessions, so you can resume a session if you have the name for it, but then you can also spawn a session with an ID, basically. So that's what we're doing here. Do you see this session ID parameter? So if you use this session ID parameter, it allows us to give it a session ID, which has to be a unique identifier. Now, what we're doing here, and I'll explain all this flow in a second. Let's not get carried away yet. Basically, this session generator is generating a unique identifier, okay, with the right format, apart from many other things. When it gets here, if it's a new message, it will actually start Claude Code in the server, and it will use the session ID to create a new session with that ID so that it could be stored and I could use it later. And then it's going to use the non-interactive mode, like I was saying, to send the message. That's all it's doing, nothing crazy. So it goes through and it could just reply, but I added a little extra steps here. So here, if it's already in use, I just have a fallback there. But if it's not already in use, then this is where I added a little bit extra. n8n has data tables. So I decided to create data tables with a session ID, whether it's the current one, and you can have a name for it or whatever you want, okay? You only really need the session ID and whether it's current or not. So what we're doing here is if it's a new session, then it will create a session in Claude Code, and then it will store it in here, only the identifier. Why? Because then whenever I'm sending a regular message down here, if I'm sending a regular message, it will just get the current session. So this node here, the only thing that it's doing, it's saying, give me from this table what the current session is. So typically it'll be like your latest one, right? And you could just continue that conversation. So it'll get the current one, and then it will send Claude Code with the resume parameter and that session ID. That allows it to then reply to that message within that context of the conversation. So you don't have to be storing anything in your database, nothing. It's just this is keeping track of the sessions. Claude Code is already storing it in their servers, so you can just have a ball. Okay, now this is really nice because it can keep track of your conversation. I'll show you in action what it looks like. But basically, I will create a new session up here, and then whenever I send a regular message, it'll come down here and just follow that path that we were looking at. Now, while I was at it, I decided to add some extra steps. So things like, I want to see which sessions exist, or I want to rename my session, or I want to switch to another session, and that's the powerful part. So that's why I'm using data tables. Like I said, very basic. In reality, you just need the code node, and that's it. But if you want to have context, then you want a way to generate new sessions, at least I do, and then you want a way to actually switch between sessions. Let me show you what it looks like in action. I have this Telegram agent, and so here it knows I'm in the Jacob conversation. That's just what I called, right? So, hello, how can I help you today? I can say something like, I don't know, what is a submarine, right? So if I do that, then it will go through and, in theory, tell me what a submarine is, right? So a submarine is a watercraft capable of operating underwater, key characteristics, blah, blah, blah. Is there something specific about a submarine? You're like, no. Okay, great. So I can continue with this conversation and say, how deep do they go? Now, keep in mind, it doesn't have any context of my conversation here, but it does have a context of what I've asked that particular session, which is really nice. So you might not use this for a chatbot, but it's a good exercise to show you that I'm using within n8n Opus 4.5 without having to pay for a token. So this could go crazy. Let's say you're building a scraper, you're building something that's doing a ton of actions that would be very expensive to do it by tokens. You can do it directly in here, which is really nice. So here I'm talking with it directly. Like you saw, I did how deep do they go, and it gives me more information about it. And then I could tell what is the did I mention it? The Mariana Trench you talk of, and then it will continue more information about that, right? Now that is just taking it to the very basic level of what you could do in Claude Code. Like, you wouldn't use it for that, but remember, we can actually have it generate files. So here, no worries, I do not need anything else. Can you see your current directory? And let's see what this does. I haven't tested this out specifically in this demo, but let's just take a look and see what's going on in here. Yes, my current directory is / the directory. However, this isn't a Git repository, and I have any specific project files loaded. Are there any files in the directory? And let's just see what it gives us. So it can look within its own directory and see if anything is there. And I'm going to do another video where I could do a bigger demo of us actually using the whole file system. And like, as you can see here, I went in and found a bunch of information within the TrueNAS system, etc., which is really interesting. And we can have it go to the directories it have access to, like home and n8n. I don't know what directory we're in here right now, but let's see. Claude maybe has access to, is it home n8n? Maybe it's home n8n, or maybe I put it on mount users. I don't remember. Anyway, it won't have access to the things I haven't given it access to, but it will have access to the things that I have given it access to, which is really nice. And so the great thing is that I could have it generate files, generate documents, directories, whatever I want, and it'll talk directly to the file system. So that's one of the benefits of Claude Code. And I always tell people, the great thing about Claude Code, if you're using your computer, for example, is it can start creating those files, create repositories, keep track of source control. So all of these files that you have there are controlled in the repository, so you can save your progress, and then if it goes haywire, like the LLMs sometimes do, you still have everything in your computer you can work with. Now imagine having this sort of in the cloud. Hikmet, I don't know how I spelled to username, so sorry. But hello, thank you very much. You're providing great information. I wonder if it's possible to develop a cloud software n8n. I have some various ideas, models that communicate with each other and develop software together. That would be amazing. A system that corrects, controls, and writes everything. Most importantly, while Gemini checks the code, Cloud continues writing the code, and our model will cloud the. Yes, you can, of course. And actually, this is a great way to do it. So the problem with that approach that you're talking about, which I really like, is that if you are doing it in n8n, you would be using a bunch of tokens of Claude and a bunch of tokens of Gemini and a bunch of tokens of OpenAI. And especially if you're having them argue against each other, like one codes and the other one checks and the other one tests and the other one reviews and the other one inspects and it creates another subagent, it becomes a lot of fun. But the problem is it's sort of an entangled loop, and it can very easily go into a big spend bill for usage. Now, doing something like this, as you can expect from what we've been talking about, it won't, because it will be within the token limitations that you have in your plan. So if you don't need the highest model like Opus 4.5, you won't hit the limits if you're using Max, for example. Or even if you're using Opus 4.5 and it's not something too crazy, with sub-agents, it'll still spin up some Sonnet agents and you'll be good. But you'll never go over your budget because it's always whatever you're paying for your subscription, which is really neat. With Gemini, you could do the same thing. So Gemini has its CLI version. And so you could do this exact same thing, just have one for Gemini, one for Claude Code, and then have them orchestrate directly. One could check the code, like you were saying, one is writing the code, etc. And one could be pushing to GitHub. It could do whatever it wants because it could do whatever Claude Code or Gemini CLI can do on your computer. So that is what is really powerful, that it's no longer what's in the desktop app or the website. So what I found personally, because we use it for software every day, when I'm in the browser, I'm very limited, or in the desktop app, because you're limited to the context that the conversation has. And you have to start creating new conversations, even if it uses sub-agents. It's not fantastic at enormous amounts of files. It just starts behaving a little odd because of the context window. When you are in Claude Code, you have a much larger context window, not because of the context window, but because of the fact that you can just spawn a new conversation every time, but all the files remain where they are. Now, give me a quick second here, because I didn't realize what time it was, and my server is doing the nightly tasks, which will absolutely kill the network. There we go. I think that should bring us back. Sorry about that. So yes, I think that's a great idea. If you do something like this, just have one for Claude Code, one for Gemini, and you'll be able to do things like that. Now, going back to why I set it up this way, I just find it very intriguing that I can create these sessions. So you see how I have these two? If I go over here, I can say something like switch, or sorry, let's do sessions. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell me which sessions are in the data table that I have here. I have the Armando one and the Jacob one. And I can create a new one. I can say new, and then whatever, it doesn't really matter. Let's talk about agents unite to work together. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. That's not the name of it. It's just, I just start a new conversation with that. And so it might respond, it might not. I don't know how I set that up. But the idea is that it will create a new conversation. There it is. And so I understand you're interested in building agents, and it started sending me things, and it understands Markdown. This is just like directly in Telegram. It's amazing. And now there should be a new entry here in the session ID. And this is now the current one, and it doesn't have a session name. So now I can go in and I can say rename. I think rename was the command. Let's actually verify that. If we go here and we check here, one of these is going to be session rename. There it is. So for rename, I'm going to call this one agents. Okay, so what this is doing is this renaming the session to agents. So if I go to the executions, I'm going to see everything that we've been doing. And I can see here that in here, when it ran this one, for example, it got the one for renaming, and it went through and it updated the row for this particular one. And now that's its name. So now if I run sessions again, or session, or whichever, it'll give me the session. So I can now switch from Jacob to Armando. So here, what is my name? Just to show you, what is my name? Again, remember, it doesn't see the conversation. It's not like some versions of the agents, it'll see however many turns you want because you have that simple memory there. But here, it's not actually seeing this. It's exactly the context that you have in the session, which is really nice. So here it says, I'll access your personal information, right? So here I could say, sorry, my name is, I don't know, Bond, James Bond. Okay, so this is the third conversation, right? Agents. And it might say something to greet me, I guess. Nice to meet you, James Bond. And it gave me the secret agent thing. Yeah, being silly. Okay, so what is my favorite drink? And I expect if it's going to be clever, it's going to give me something like shaken, not stirred, right? Favorite drink is a vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. There it is. So using its whatever knowledge of the internet. So now if I want to switch to, let's do Armando, then I believe that was a command. I set it up, session switch to Armando. What is my name? Then it shouldn't say James Bond. It should say Armando, I guess. And I think I told it something about having a pet. I don't know if it was Jacob or Armando. One of them, I told him I have a pet, like a cat or something. And so, yes, you have a cat named Felix. I don't, but that's what I told it. So, thank you for your comments, by the way. Yeah, it's my pleasure. So, that's how it works. And if anyone wants to use it, just send me a DM. YouTube doesn't do DMs, but if you see this recording on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever, send me a DM. I'll send you the JSON file. It's really neat. Everything you could do. You don't need to use all of this, but I think the part of having the option of having sessions that you can then reuse and switch between them is great. If you were just doing a regular system, then you would likely just have one code node and then connect it to whatever you want and have a session and have a set widget or a set node where you would set what session is the one that you're going to use. I typically want to have control over how much context the agent has in particular. So this is a way to do it. In the example that we were talking about, where you might have some of them talking together, then yeah, you could do some sort of orchestration there. That would be a lot of fun. But I just wanted to share this right now because it is so powerful. You have no idea. Now that I explained it, so it can create a conversation, it can send messages to the conversation, receive messages from the conversation, it can rename the conversations, it can change among sessions and everything through Telegram. So imagine this is, I have it here, but the reality is you would use Telegram on the phone, and you could use WhatsApp, but for Telegram is great because the API is free. You can just use it. WhatsApp, you do have a pay per usage. So imagine that it would be really nice to see where I have the files hosted. Let me check something here. So if I open this here, I have that. Let's go back. Mount big disk users. Okay, so let's see here. Can you see mount big disk users n8n? Maybe it'll see it, maybe not. I don't know, because I didn't give it a lot of permissions for the demo. Yes, I can see it. You see, there it is, the file called chocolate. So now we're here. So what do you want me to do to this directory? Yeah, let's see. What should we do? We can tell it, please create 4 more No, you know what? Create 4 scripts for YouTube Shorts based on the poem in chocolate.md in the same directory. Okay, so since I didn't give it a working directory, let's see what it's going to do. And I haven't given a repository or anything, but I do want to showcase what it could do without giving it too much things. And let's see if it has the permissions to do it as well, because that's another subject that we'll cover whenever we actually run a demo where we're doing it completely. So, and we'll be able to see also within, if we go to the execution, see what it is. I don't have permission to write file in that directory yet. Could you grant access so I can create the 4 scripts? Alternatively, I can display the scripts here in the chat for you to copy. You can specify a different location where I have write access. Yeah, so I have to give it permission, and then it will be able to do that. Okay, so I'll say display them, please. Okay, all right. So that's Claude telling me that it doesn't have write access in that particular directory, but if we set the permissions properly, then it will have write access. And so that means that anything that you could do via the terminal, you can do from here. So it could create 1,000 files if you need to, right? So really nice, really creative way to use Claude Code within n8n, I think. So I hope this helps. Again, send me a message if you want to use it, but I'll share a more in-depth deep dive later on. But I did want to share this because I know a lot of people don't know that it's possible, and I think it's very nice. All right, well, thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.